Hi, it's Matt Dalby, and I'm going to be reading over a series of weeks Shelley's Queen Mab. Um, I won't go into a great deal of depth about the text, but know that most editions, and certainly most Victorian editions, leave out the notes. And the notes are an important part of why Queen Mab became a very popular book amongst Chartists and other working class and other non-working class radicals of the early 19th century. Um, Shelley in it discusses atheism, anarchism, uh, sex and marriage, science, contraception, whole range of subjects. Um, and the footnotes sort of tenuously relate to passages in the text. So what I'll do is I'll read a certain number of sections of the poem each week. Uh, I don't think this is going to be appearing every other week. I think it'll probably be interrupted by reviews and other things that myself or other people do. So it'll take some time to get through the poem and the notes. But what I'll do with each reading is I'll read a certain number of sections of the poem, and then I'll read the notes that relate to those sections. And I'll try not to fluff my words too badly. What I want to try and do is see if I can read the whole thing without too many stumbles, so that I don't have to piss about editing it. This is actually, I think, my fourth attempt reading it today, so hopefully we'll get through this. To Harriet Westbrook. Whose is the love that, gleaming through the world, wards off the poisonous arrow of its scorn? Whose is the warm and partial praise, virtue's most sweet reward? Beneath whose looks did my reviving soul riper in truth and virtuous daring grow? Whose eyes have I gazed fondly on, and loved mankind the more? Harriet, on thine! Thou wert my purer mind, thou wert the inspiration of my song. Thine are these earthly wilding flowers, though garlanded by me. Then press into thy breast this pledge of love, and know, though time may change and years may roll, each floweret gathered in my heart it consecrates to thine. Queen Mab 1. How wonderful is death, death and his brother sleep. One pale as yonder waning moon, with lips of lurid blue, the other rosy as the morn, when throned on ocean's wave it blushes o'er the world, yet both so passing wonderful. Hath then the gloomy power, whose reign is in the tainted sepulchres, seized on her sinless soul? Must then that peerless form, which love and admiration cannot view without a beating heart, those azure veins which steal like streams along a field of snow, that lovely outline which is fair as breathing marble, perish? Must putrefaction's breath leave nothing of this heavenly sight but loathsomeness and ruin, spare nothing but a gloomy theme on which the lightest heart might moralise? Or is it only a sweet slumber stealing o'er sensation, which the breathing of roseate morning chaseth into darkness? Will Ianthe wake again, and give that faithful bosom joy whose sleepless spirit waits to catch light, life, and rapture from her smile? Yes, she will wake again, although her glowing limbs are motionless, and silent those sweet lips once breathing eloquence that might have soothed a tiger's rage or thawed the cold heart of a conqueror. Her dewy eyes are closed, and on their lids, whose texture fine scarce hides the dark blue orbs beneath, the baby sleep is pillowed. Her golden tresses shade the bosom's stainless pride, curling like tendrils of the parasite around a marble column. Hark! Whence that rushing sound? 'Tis like the wondrous strain that round a lonely ruin swells, which, wandering on the echoing shore, the enthusiast hears at evening. 'Tis softer than when the west winds sigh. 'Tis wilder than the unmeasured notes of that strange lyre whose strings the genii of the breezes sweep, Those lines of rainbow light are like the moonbeams when they fall through some cathedral window, but the tints are such as may not find comparison on earth. Behold the chariot of the fairy queen. Celestial coursers pour the unyielding air. Their filmy pennons at her word they unfurl, and stop obedient to the reins of light. These the queen of spells drew in. She spread a charm around the spot, and leaning graceful from the ethereal car, long did she gaze and silently upon the slumbering maid. Oh, not the visioned poet in his dreams, when silvery clouds float through the wildered brain, when every sight of lovely, wild and grand astonishes, enraptures, elevates, when fancy at a glance combines the wondrous and the beautiful, so bright, so fair, so wild a shape hath ever yet beheld as that which reigned the coursers of the air, and poured the magic of her gaze upon the sleeping maid. The broad and yellow moon shone dimly through her form, that form of faultless symmetry. The pearly and pellucid car moved not the moonlight's line. 'Twas not an earthly pageant. Those who had looked upon the sight passing all human glory saw not the yellow moon, saw not the mortal scene, heard not the night wind's rush, heard not an earthly sound, saw but the fairy pageant, heard but the heavenly strains that filled the lonely dwelling. The fairy's frame was slight, yon fibrous cloud that catches but the palest tinge of even, and which the straining eye can hardly seize when melting into eastern twilight's shadow, was scarce so thin, so slight. But the faint star that gems the glittering coronet of morn sheds not a light so mild, so powerful, as that which, bursting from the fairy's form, spread a purpureal halo around the scene, and with an undulating motion swayed to her outline gracefully. From her celestial car the fairy queen descended, and thrice she waved her wand. Circled with wreaths of amaranth, her thin and misty form moved with the moving air, and the clear silver tones as thus she spoke were such as are unheard by all but gifted ear. Fairy. Stars, your balmiest influence shed, elements, your wrath suspend. Sleep, ocean, in the rocky bounds that circle thy domain. Let not a breath be seen to stir around yon grass-grown ruin's height. Let even the restless gossamer sleep on the moveless air. Soul of Ianthe, thou, judged alone worthy of the envied boon that waits the good and the sincere, that waits those who have struggled and with resolute will vanquished earth's pride and meanness, burst thy chains, the icy chains of custom, and have shone the death stars of their age. Soul of Ianthe, awake, arise! Sudden arose Ianthe's soul. It stood all beautiful in naked purity, the perfect semblance of its bodily frame, instinct with inexpressible beauty and grace. Each stain of earthliness had passed away. It reassumed its native dignity and stood immortal amid ruin. Upon the couch the body lay, wrapped in the depth of slumber. Its features were fixed and meaningless, yet animal life was there, and every organ yet performed its natural functions. 'Twas a sight of wonder to behold. The body and the soul, the self-same lineaments, the same marks of identity were there, yet, oh, how different! One aspires to heaven, pants for its sempiternal heritage, and ever-changing, ever-rising, still wanton in endless being. The other, for a time the unwilling sport of circumstance and passion, struggles on, fleets through its sad duration rapidly, then, like a useless and worn-out machine, rots, perishes, and passes. Fairy, spirit, who hast dived so deep, spirit, who hast soared so high, thou the fearless, thou the mild, accept the boon thy worth hath earned, ascend the car with me. Spirit, do I dream? Is this new feeling but a visioned ghost of slumber? If indeed I am a soul, a free, a disembodied soul, speak to me again. Fairy, I am Queen Mab. To me 'tis given the wonders of the human world to keep. the secrets of the immeasurable past in the unfailing consciences of men, those stern, unflattering chroniclers, I find the future from the causes which arise. In each event I gather not the sting which retributive memory implants in the hard bosom of a selfish man, nor the ecstatic and exulting throb which virtue's votary feels when he sums up the thoughts and actions of a well-spent day, are unforeseen, unregistered by me. And it is yet permitted me to rend the veil of mortal frailty, that the spirit clothed in its changeless purity may know how soon is to accomplish the great end for which it hath its being, and may taste that peace which in the end all life will share. This is the meed of virtue. Happy soul, ascend the car with me. The chains of earth's immurement fell from Ianthe's spirit. They shrank and brake like bandages of straw beneath awakened giants. The chains of earth's immurement fell from Ianthe's spirit. They shrank and brake like bandages of straw beneath awakened giants' strength. She knew her glorious change and felt in apprehension uncontrolled new raptures opening round. Each daydream of her mortal life, each frenzied vision of the slumbers that closed each well-spent day, seemed now to meet reality. The fairy and the soul proceeded, the silver clouds disparted, and as the car of magic they ascended, again the speechless music swelled, again the coursers of the air unfurled their azure pennons, and the queen, shaking the beamy reins, bade them pursue their way. The magic car moved on. The night was fair, and countless stars studded heaven's dark blue vault. Just o'er the eastern wave peeped the first faint smile of morn. The magic car moved on. From the celestial hoofs the atmosphere in flaming sparkles flew, and where the burning wheels eddied above the mountain's loftiest peak was traced a line of lightning. Now it flew far above a rock, the utmost verge of earth, rival of the Andes, whose dark brow lowered o'er the silver sea. Far, far below the chariot's path, calm as a slumbering babe, tremendous ocean lay. The mirror of its stillness showed the pale and waning stars, the chariot's fiery track, and the grey light of morn, tinging those fleecy clouds that canopied the dawn. Seemed it that the chariot's way lay through the midst of an immense concave, radiant with a million constellations tinged with shades of infinite colour, and semicircled with a belt flashing incessant meteors. The magic car moved on as they approached their goal. The coursers seemed to gather speed. The sea no longer distinguished earth. Appeared a vast and shadowy sphere. The earth's unclouded orb rolled through the black concave. Its rays of rapid light parted around the chariot's swifter course, and fell like ocean's feathery spray dashed from the boiling surge before a vessel's prow. The magic car moved on. Earth's distant orb appeared the smallest light that twinkles in the heaven, whilst round the chariot's way innumerable systems rolled, and countless spheres diffused an ever-varying glory. It was a sight of wonder. Some were horned, like the crescent moon. Some shed a mild and silver beam, like Hesperus or the western sea. Some dashed athwart the train of flame. Some dashed athwart with trains of flame, like worlds to death and ruin driven. Some shone like suns, and as the chariot passed, eclipsed all other light. Spirit of nature, here, in this interminable wilderness of worlds, at whose immensity even soaring fancy staggers, here is thy fitting temple. Yet not the lightest leaf that quivers to the passing breeze is less instinct with thee. Yet not the meanest worm that lurks in graves and fattens on the dead less shares thy eternal breath. Spirit of nature, thou, imperishable as this scene, here is thy fitting temple. 2. If solitude hath ever led thy steps to the wild ocean's echoing shore, and thou hast lingered there until the sun's broad orb seemed resting on the burnished wave, thou must have marked the lines of purple gold that motionless hung o'er the sinking sphere. Thou must have marked the billowy clouds edged with intolerable radiancy, towering like rocks of jet, crowned with a diamond wreath. And yet there is a moment when the sun's highest point peeps like a star o'er the ocean's western edge, when those far clouds of feathery gold, shaded with deepest purple, gleam like islands on a dark blue sea. Then has thy fancy soared above the earth, and furled its wearied wing within the fairies' fane. Yet not the golden islands gleaming in yon flood of light, nor the feathery curtains stretching o'er the sun's bright couch, nor the burnished ocean waves paving that gorgeous dome, so fair, so wonderful a sight as Mab's ethereal palace could afford. Yet likest evening's vault, that fairy hall, as heaven, low resting on the wave it spread, its floors of flashing light, its vast and azure dome, its fertile golden islands floating on a silver sea, whilst suns their mingling beamings darted through clouds of circumambient darkness, and pearly battlements around looked o'er the immense of heaven. The magic car no longer moved. The fairy and the spirit entered the hall of spells. Those golden clouds that rolled in glittering billows beneath the azure canopy within the ethereal footsteps trembled not. The magic car no longer moved. The fairy and the spirit entered the hall of spells. Those golden clouds that rolled in glittering billows beneath the azure canopy with the ethereal footsteps trembled not. The light and crimson mists floating to strains of thrilling melody through that unearthly dwelling yielded to every movement of the will. Upon their passive swell the spirit leaned, and for the varied bliss that pressed around used not the glorious privilege of virtue and of wisdom. "Spirit," the fairy said, and pointed to the gorgeous domes, "this is a wondrous sight and mocks all human grandeur. But were it virtue's only meed to dwell in a celestial palace, or resigned to pleasurable impulses, immured within the prison of itself, the will of changeless nature would be unfulfilled. Learn to make others happy. Spirit, come, this is thine high reward. The past shall rise, thou shalt behold the present. I will teach the secrets of the future." The fairy and the spirit approached the overhanging battlement. Below lay stretched the universe. There, far as the remotest line that bounds imagination's flight, countless and unending orbs in mazy motion intermingled, yet still fulfilled immutably eternal nature's law. Above, below, around, the circling systems formed a wilderness of harmony, each with undeviating aim, in eloquent silence through the depths of space pursued its wondrous way. There was a little light that twinkled in the misty distance. None but a spirit's eye might ken that rolling orb. None but a spirit's eye, and in no other place but that celestial dwelling, might behold each action of this earth's inhabitants. But matter, space, and time in those aerial mansions ceased to act, and all prevailing wisdom, when it reaps the harvest of its excellence, o'erbounds these obstacles, of which an earthly soul fears to attempt the conquest. The fairy pointed to the earth. The spirit's intellectual eye its kindred beings recognized. The thronging thousands to a passing view seemed like an anthill citizens. How wonderful that even the passions, prejudices, interests that sway the meanest being, the weak touch that moves the finest nerves, and in one human brain causes the faintest thought, becomes a link in the great chain of nature. "Behold," the fairy cried, "Palmyra's ruined palaces. Behold," the fairy cried, "Palmyra's ruined palaces. Behold, where grandeur frowned. Behold, where pleasure smiled. What now remains? The memory of senselessness and shame. What is immortal there? Nothing. It stands to tell a melancholy tale, to give an awful warning. Soon oblivion will steal silently the remnant of its fame. Monarchs and conquerors there proud o'er prostrate millions trod. The earthquakes of the human race, like them, forgotten when the reign that marks their shock is past. Like them, forgotten when the ruin that marks their shock is past. Beside the eternal Nile the pyramids have risen. Nile shall pursue his changeless ways. Those pyramids shall fall, yea, not a stone shall stand to tell the spot whereon they stood. The very site shall be forgotten, as is their builder's name. Behold yon sterile spot, where now the wandering Arab's tent flaps on the desert blast. There once did old Salem's haughty fane reared high to heaven its 1,000 golden domes, and in the blushing face of day exposed its shameful glory. Oh, many a widow, many an orphan cursed the building of that fane, and many a father worn out with toil and slavery implored the poor man's God to sweep it from the earth, and spare his children the detested task of piling stone on stone and poisoning the choicest days of life to soothe a dotard's vanity. There an inhuman and uncultured race howled hideous promises to their demon god. They rushed to war, tore from the mother's womb the unborn child. Old age and infancy promiscuous perished. Their victorious arms left not a soul to breathe. Oh, they were fiends. But what was he who taught them that the God of nature and benevolence had given a special sanction to the trade of blood? His name and theirs are fading, and the tales of this barbarian nature which imposture recites till terror credits are pursuing itself into forgetfulness. Where Athens, Rome, and Sparta stood, there is a moral desert now. The mean and miserable huts, the yet more wretched palaces contrasted with those ancient fanes, now crumbling into oblivion. The long and lonely colonnades through which the ghosts of freedom stalks seem like a well-known tune which in some dear scene we have loved to hear, remembered now in sadness, but oh, how much more changed. How gloomier is the contrast of human nature there, where Socrates expired, a tyrant slave, a coward and a fool spreads death around, then shuddering meets his own. Where Cicero and Antoninus lived, a cowled and hypocritical monk prays, curses, and deceives. Spirit, 10,000 years have scarcely passed away, since in the waste where now the savage drinks his enemy's blood, and aping Europe's sun wakes the unholy song of war, arose a stately city, metropolis of the western continent. There now the mossy column stone, indented by time's unrelaxing grasp, which once appeared to brave all save its country's ruin. There the wide forest scene, rude in the uncultivated loveliness of gardens long run wild, seems, to the unwilling sojourner whose steps chance in that desert has delayed, thus to have stood since earth was what it is. Yet once it was the busiest haunt, whither as to a common centre flocked strangers and ships and merchandise. Once peace and freedom blessed the cultivated plain, but wealth, that curse of man, blighted the bud of its prosperity. Virtue and wisdom, truth and liberty fled, to return not until man shall know that they alone can give the bliss worthy a soul that claims its kindred with eternity. There's not one atom of yon earth but once was living man, not the minutest drop of rain that hangeth in its thinnest clouds but flowed in human veins. And from the burning plains where Libyan monsters yell, from the most gloomy glens of Greenland's sunless clime, to where the golden fields of fertile England spread their harvest to the day, thou canst not find one spot whereon no city stood. How strange is human pride! I tell thee that those living things to whom the fragile blade of grass that springeth in the morn and perisheth ere noon is an unbounded world, I tell thee that those viewless beings whose mansion is the smallest particle of the impassive atmosphere think and feel and live like man. that their affections and antipathies, like his, produce the laws ruling their moral state, and the minutest throb that through their frame diffuses the slightest, faintest motion is fixed and indispensable as the majestic laws that rule yon rolling orbs. The fairy paused. The spirit in ecstasy of admiration felt, all knowledge of the past revived. The events of old and wondrous times which dim tradition interruptedly teaches to credulous vulgar were unfolded in just perspective to the view, yet dim from their infinitude. The spirit seemed to stand high on an isolated pinnacle, the flood of ages combating below, the depth of the unbounded universe, above and all around nature's unchanging harmony. 3. Fairy, the spirit said, and on the queen of spells fixed her ethereal eyes. I thank thee. Thou hast given a boon which I will not resign, and taught a lesson not to be unlearned. I know the past, and thence I will essay to glean a warning for the future, so that man may profit by his errors, and derive experience from his folly. For when the power of imparting joy is equal to the will, the human soul requires no other heaven. Mab. Turn thee, surpassing spirit. Much yet remains unscanned. Thou knowest how great is man. Thou knowest his imbecility. Yet learn thou what he is. Yet learn the lofty destiny which restless time prepares for every living soul. Behold a gorgeous palace that amid yon populous city rears its 1,000 towers, and seems itself a city. Gloomy troops of sentinels in stern and silent ranks encompass it around. The dweller there cannot be free and happy. Hearest thou not the curses of the fatherless, the groans of those who have no friend? He passes on, the king, the wearer of the gilded chain that binds his soul to abjectness, the fool whom courtiers nickname monarch, whilst a slave, even to the basest appetites. That man heeds not a shriek of penury. He smiles at the deep curses which the destitute mutter in secret, and a sullen joy pervades his bloodless heart when thousands groan. But for those morsels which his wantonness wastes in unjoyous revelry to save all that they love from famine, when he hears the tale of horror, to some ready-made face of hypocritical assent he turns, smothering the glow of shame that, spite of him, flushes his bloated cheek. Now to the meal of silence. Now to the meal of silence, grandeur and excess he drags his palled, unwilling appetite. If gold gleaming around and numerous viands cold from every clime could force the loathing sense to overcome Now to the meal of silence, grandeur and excess he drags his palled, unwilling appetite. If gold, gleaming around, and numerous viands cold from every clime could force the loathing sense to overcome satiety, if wealth, the spring it draws from poisons not or vice, unfeeling, stubborn vice coveteth not its food, the deadliest venom, then that king is happy, and the peasant who fulfills his unforced task when he returns at even, and by the blaring faggot meets again her welcome, for whom all his toil is sped, tastes not a sweeter meal. Behold now him, stretched on the gorgeous couch, his fevered brain reels dizzily awhile. But too soon the slumber of intemperance subsides, and conscious that undying serpent calls her venomous brood to their nocturnal task. Listen, he speaks. Oh, mark that frenzied eye, oh, mark that deadly visage. King. No cessation! Oh, must this last for ever? Awful death, I wish yet to fear to... King. No cessation! Oh, must this last for ever? Awful death, I wish yet fear to clasp thee. Not one moment of dreamless sleep. Oh, dear and blessed peace! Why dost thou shroud thy vestal purity in penury and dungeons? Wherefore lurkest with danger, death, and solitude, yet shunnest the palace I have built thee? Sacred peace, oh visit me but once, and pitying shed one drop of balm upon my withered soul. Vain man, that palace is the virtuous heart, and peace defileth not her snowy robe in such a shed as thine. Hark, yet he mutters, his slumbers are but varied agonies. They prey like scorpions on the springs of life. There needeth not the hell that bigots frame to punish those who err. Earth in itself contains at once the evil and the cure, and all-sufficing nature can chastise those who transgresses her law. She only knows how justly to proportion to the fault the punishment it merits. Is it strange that this poor wretch should pride him in his woe, take pleasure in his abjectness, and hug the scorpion that consumes him? Is it strange that, placed on a conspicuous throne of thorns, grasping at an iron sceptre and immured within a splendid prison whose stern bounds shut him from all that's good or dear on earth, his soul asserts not its humanity, that man's mild nature rises not in war against a king's employ? No, 'tis not strange. He, like the vulgar, thinks, feels, acts, and lives just as his father did. The unconquered powers of precedent and custom interpose between a king and virtue. Stranger yet, those who know not nature, nor deduce the future from the present, it may seem that not one slave who suffers from crimes of this unnatural being, not one wretch whose children famish and whose nuptial bed is earth's unpitying bosom, rears an arm to dash him from the throne. Those gilded flies that, basking in the sunshine of a court, fatten on its corruption. What are they? The drones of the community. They feed on the mechanic's labour, the starved hind. For them compels the stubborn glebe to yield its unshared harvests, and yon squalid form, leaner than fleshless misery that wastes a sunless life in the unwholesome mine, drags out in labour a protracted death to glut their grandeur. Many faint with toil, that few may know the cares and woe of sloth. Whence, thinkest thou, kings and parasites arose? Whence that unnatural line of drones, who heap toil and unvanquishable penury on those who build their palaces and bring their daily bread? From vice, black, loathsome vice, from rapine, madness, treachery, and wrong, from all that genders misery and makes of earth this thorny wilderness, from lust, revenge, and murder. And when reason's voice, loud as the voice of nature, shall have waked the nation, and mankind perceive that vice is discord, war, and misery, that virtue is peace and happiness and harmony, when man's maturer nature shall disdain the playthings of its childhood, kingly glare will lose its power to dazzle, its authority will silently pass by. The gorgeous throne shall stand unnoticed in the regal hall, fast falling to decay, whilst falsehood's trade shall be as hateful and unprofitable as that of truth is now. Where is the fame which the vainglorious mighty of the earth seek to eternize? Oh, the faintest sound from time's light footfall, the minutest wave that swells the flood of ages whelms is nothing. That swells the flood of ages whelms in nothing the unsubstantial bubble. Aye, today, stern is the tyrant's manacle. Stern is the tyrant's mandate, red the gaze that flashes desolation, strong the arm that scatters multitudes. Tomorrow comes. That mandate is a thunder peal that died in ages past, that gaze a transient flash on which the midnight closed, and on that arm the worm has made his meal. The virtuous man, who great in his humility as kings are little in their grandeur, he who leads invincibly a life of resolute good and stands amid the silent dungeon depths, more free and fearless than the trembling judge, who clothed in venal power vainly strove to bind the impassive spirit. When he falls, his mild eye beams benevolence no more, withered the hand outstretched but to relieve, sunk reason's simple eloquence that rolled but to appall the guilty. Yes, the grave hath quenched that eye, and death's relentless frost withered that arm, but the unfading fame which virtue hangs upon its votary's tomb, the deathless memory of that man whom kings call to their mind and tremble, the remembrance with which the happy spirit contemplates its well-spent pilgrimage on earth, shall never pass away. Nature rejects the monarch, not the man, the subject, not the citizen. For kings and subjects, mutual foes forever play a losing game into each other's hands, whose stakes are vice and misery. The man of virtuous soul commands naught nor obeys. Power, like a desolating pestilence, pollutes whate'er it touches, and obedience, bane of all genius, virtue, freedom, truth, makes slaves of men and of the human frame a mechanized automaton. When Nero, high over flaming Rome, with savage joy, lowered like a fiend, drank with enraptured ear the shrieks of agonizing death, beheld the frightful desolation spread, and felt a new created sense within his soul thrill to the sight and vibrate to the sound. Thinkest thou his grandeur had not overcome the force of human kindness? And when Rome, with one stern blow, hurled not the tyrant down, crushed not the arm, red with her dearest blood, had not submissive abjectness destroyed nature's suggestions? Look on yonder earth. The golden harvests spring, the unfailing sun sheds light and life, the fruits, the flowers, the trees arise in due succession, all things speak peace, harmony, and love. The universe in nature's silent eloquence declares that all fulfills the works of love and joy, all but the outcast man. He fabricates the sword which stabs his peace. He cherisheth the snakes that gnaw his heart. He raiseth up the tyrant whose delight is in his woe, whose sport is in his agony. Yon sun, lights it the grate alone? Yon silver beams, sleep they less sweetly on the cottage thatch than on the dome of kings? Is Mother Earth a step-dame to her numerous sons, who earn her unshared gifts with unremitting toil, a mother only to those puling babes who, nursed in ease and luxury, make men the playthings of their babyhood and mar in self-important childishness the peace which men alone appreciate? Spirit of nature, no! The pure diffusion of thy essence throbs alike in every human heart. Thou, aye, erectest there thy throne of power unappealable. Thou art the judge beneath whose nod man's brief and frail authority is powerless as the wind that passeth icily by. Thine the tribunal which surpasseth the show of human justice, as God surpasses man's. Spirit of nature, thou, life of interminable multitudes, soul of those mighty spheres, whose changeless paths through heaven's deep silence lie, soul of that smallest being, the dwelling of whose life is one faint April sun-gleam, man, like these passive things, thy will unconsciously fulfilleth. Like theirs, his age of endless peace, which time is fast maturing, will swiftly surely come, and the unbounded frame which then pervadest will be without a flaw, marring its perfect symmetry. So there we have the first three sections of Queen Mab, and I'll now read the notes that accompany those three sections. In fact, the notes fall entirely in the first of those sections. So, appended to this, the appended to the first So the first note is appended to the words, "The sun's unclouded orb rolled through the black concave." And of that, Shelley writes, "Beyond our atmosphere, the sun would appear a rayless orb of fire in the midst of a black concave. The equal diffusion of its light on Earth is owing to the refraction of the rays by the atmosphere and their reflection from other bodies. Light consists either of vibrations propagated through a subtle medium or of numerous minute particles repelled in all directions from the luminous body. Its velocity greatly exceeds that of any substance with which we are acquainted. Observations on the eclipses of Jupiter's satellites have demonstrated that light takes up to no more than 8 minutes and 7 seconds in passing from the sun to the Earth, a distance of 95 million miles. Some idea may be gained of the immense distances of the fixed stars when it is computed that many years would elapse before light could reach this Earth from the nearest of them. Yet in 1 year, light travels 54,224 billion miles, which is at a distance 5,707,600 times greater than that of the Earth from the Sun." And second note is appended to the lines, "Whilst round the chariot's way innumerable systems rolled." The plurality of worlds, the indefinite immensity of the universe, is a most awful subject of contemplation. He who rightly feels its mystery and grandeur is in no danger of seduction from the falsehoods of religious systems or of deifying the principle of the universe. It is impossible to believe that the spirit that pervades this infinite machine begat a son upon the body of a Jewish woman, or is angered at the consequences of that necessity which is a synonym of itself. All that miserable tale of the devil and Eve and an intercessor with the childish mummeries of the God of the Jews is irreconcilable with the knowledge of the stars. The works of his fingers have borne witness against him. The nearest of the fixed stars is inconceivably distant from the Earth, and they are probably proportionably distant from each other. By a calculation of the velocity of light, Sirius is supposed to be at least 542,000 Sirius is supposed to be at least 542,024 billion miles from the Earth. That which appears only like a thin silvery cloud streaking the heavens is in effect composed of innumerable clusters of stars, each shining with its own light and illuminating numbers of planets that revolve around them. Millions and millions of suns are ranged round us, all attended by innumerable worlds, yet calm, regular and harmonious, all keeping the paths of immutable necessity. And so that's where we're at with Queen Mab as it stands at present. There's a great deal more to read, and certainly the next note, which falls in section 4, includes a long poem on itself, and there are extensive notes on from section 5, so I will probably read either only section 4 or section 5 or 4 and 5 next. I'll see how it works out, but yeah, I'm enjoying this. I didn't make too many errors. Most of those I've edited out because I've kind of read the line again as I'm going. So Yeah, that was the first three sections of Shelley's Queen Mab. You can read along if you like. You can find the notes online. There are some. There's an edition of Mab and the notes on archive.org, and that's the edition that I've been reading the notes from. So yeah, see you next time, whatever that is.